Hi everybody, I'm Tyler from Turbo Ace. I'm just here today to talk about some of the difference between our AllSteady 6 and the AllSteady Motion. Now, we sold a lot of AllSteady 6 through our Kickstarter campaign, and recently we started releasing the AllSteady Motion. And I just want to talk about some of the differences because to the naked eye they look very, very similar. But we've actually gone through and listened to a lot of our customers' feedback and reviewers' feedback and made a lot of differences to the gimbal. In fact, so much that there's almost no parts are similar between the two. So to start off with here, I'll start with the front of the cage of the AllSteady 6. I have the AllSteady 6 here, and then the AllSteady Motion. We've also had an AllSteady Pro in between that incorporated some of the differences between the two, but I'll start off with the difference between the original AllSteady 6 from our Kickstarter campaign to the AllSteady Motion that we're selling now. So for the first starters, the bottom plate here where you actually mount the camera to, we went through and actually threaded the center channel and made it longer there so you can mount the larger cameras like the red camera. So if you look down here on the bottom of our AllSteady Motion, the center channel is actually threaded. Now we have a quick release plate mounted in there, but if you see, we have the two threaded channels in there for the standard screw size for like your red Epic camera. Next, we also realized you had to secure the camera better in the top if you're going to secure it better in the bottom. So before we had a little thinner plate up here in the top where you had kind of a divide as to where you could put it, either the left side or the right side, but you had a little block in the center. So what we went through was actually made that plate a little bit stronger and a little bit beefier, thicker, so you can match it up either top or bottom, and made the channel the full length of it so you can actually slide full side to side, making it easier to adjust when you're mounting through your hot shoe mount. Next, we also actually upgraded the motors. So on the AllSteady 6, we started with a 5208 motor, so it's 52 millimeters wide by 8 millimeters tall. Now, because we wanted to use larger motors, we had to actually add an encoder plate to the back, and we actually went to a 62 millimeter motor, and it's also still 8 millimeters wide. Now, to accommodate the larger motor, we also had to re-engineer the housing here to accommodate 3 ball bearings instead of the 2 that are on the AllSteady 6. That gives it a little bit smoother feel and a little bit firmer of an action as it's going through here. So one thing you did hear me say was the encoders. That's one of the biggest benefits of the AllSteady Motion over the AllSteady 6 is the fact that each motor has an encoder now at the end of it so that it knows where its placement is as opposed to just relying upon the I2C sensors. So on the AllSteady 6, what we used was a square carbon tube in the back by a clamp with 4 screws holding it on. Now, under heavy load, some customers complain they get resonance through this tube, so you hear like a vibration type sound coming through it. So what we decided to do was actually take out this carbon tube, get rid of this 4 screw clamping design, and went for a one-piece aluminum CNC backing roll bar. So it's all one piece now made of solid aluminum, and it's milled out to the specifications to make it nice and light. And then we got rid of the 4 clamping screws and replaced them with 3 cantilever screws and a CNC bracket in the center here that gives it a much more solid structure when you're mounting to. So when you're using those larger, heavier cameras, you don't have to worry about the resonance coming through the roll bar. Also, with the roll motor, we use the same motor, but we added an encoder to the back too, so that the motor knows where its position is. One of the problems with the AllSteady 6 was the fact that it did not have encoders, so it relied completely upon I2C sensors. Now, I2C sensors are calibrated by temperature and pressure. So if I calibrate it here in Orange County, California, and you take it somewhere where it's snowing and it's super cold, those sensors are no longer calibrated for the conditions you're in. So often you'd see the roll bar come off slightly like this because the sensors are reading it differently for a different pressure. With the AllSteady Motion, we added an encoder to each one of the motors. So even if the sensor thinks it's off by the temperature or pressure difference, the encoder remembers exactly where it's supposed to be. So even if you're off, it'll slowly come back, just not like before, so you don't have to constantly recalibrate your sensors. Okay, so basically the entire cage here has been completely redesigned from here back. The one-piece aluminum plate stays the same between the AllSteady 6 and the AllSteady Motion, but what we did was actually add a mode button here to the back on the AllSteady Motion, where if you're not going to be using the handlebars and you have it mounted to a jib or a crane or a multi-rotor, you can switch between modes just by pressing the red button on the back. Okay. Also, on the AllSteady 6, we did not use an encoder for the pan motor, and on the AllSteady Motion, we actually added an encoder in here. To do that, we had to re-engineer this plate, which actually gave slightly more clearance for the bottom screws on the motors here, so you wouldn't have any problem with those rubbing as well. And we also moved the joystick cable that was normally up here at the top, now in the back with a much easier screw to do the quick release mount. Same with the AllSteady 6 and the AllSteady Motion. Up here we use a Manfrotto 577 adaptable quick release plate at the top. So if you detach your handlebars here, they'll slide right into a Manfrotto 577 quick release plate or ours, which are compatible with the Manfrotto 577. And for the handlebars up here, it pretty much stay the same at the very center top plate, but one of the features we come out with is a monopod conversion that replaces this top plate that allows you to mount a quick release plate right to the top, which I'll show you later as well. On the AllSteady 6, we had aluminum for the handlebar here for briefcase mode. We changed that slightly and re-engineered it here so that you could actually mount your lens hound controller right here on the back. So it has a quick release mount there for you as well. So when we added the encoders to the motors for the AllSteady Motion, one of the things that changed was, as the AllSteady 6 was working, it was requiring power from the motors to kind of keep it in place if you weren't perfectly balanced. So if you were perfectly balanced, you get an hour to 2 hours of use, depending on how close you were to balance. With the AllSteady Motion, because it knows where it's supposed to be and the encoders are giving it the right place, it'll remember that and require much less energy to use. On average, I was getting 3 to 4 hours of use. Some of the light camera setups I've used have gone as much as 8 hours on a single battery life.